Mm. My next guest on the Quantum Shift podcast is someone who studies the beliefs and mysteries that shape our culture from the inside out. Dr. Barna Donovan is a professor of communications and media studies at St. Peter's University, as well as an author whose work dives deep into fandom, conspiracy theories, UFO culture, as well as the psychology behind why people believe what they believe. He's been featured in national media for his insights on everything from pop culture obsession to paranormal experiences, and he brings a rare blend of academic rigor, curiosity, open minded questioning. This conversation pulls back the curtain on how stories, symbols, and mysteries influence our society and why they matter more than we all realize. Enjoy. This is a good one, folks. Dr. Barnard Donovan, welcome to the podcast, my friend. I think I'm going to start off with, because your background is very fascinating, the books are fascinating, but I want to ask you, what first fascinated you about the intersection of belief, paranoia, and popular culture and conspiracy theories? Like, how did it all start?
Sure. I believe it was back in 2005, if I remember correctly. And by the way, thank you very much for having me on as a guest. Very excited.
Thanks for being on.
But it was back in 2005, if I remember correctly, when I was watching a miniseries on the Sci-Fi Channel about the Bermuda Triangle. I think it was called just the Triangle. And I forget if it was one or two episodes, or might have been three episodes long. And as it goes on, I was very interested, and I thought, okay, no one has really done a really definitive Bermuda Triangle movie or Bermuda Triangle miniseries, anything like that. So let me check this out. There's some fairly large named stars in it. So I'm watching this, and what comes to emerge fairly quickly, and the plot is that there's actually a big government conspiracy behind the Bermuda Triangle, and at that point, I was thinking, okay, is this too of an easy way of the screenwriters to put in a twist, or if they're are they not more creative and to come up with some kind of an explanation, something really off the wall, something really fantastic and imaginative explanation for what is going on in the Bermuda Triangle. But rather than, well, there was a government experiment and it went awry and it tore this hole in time, and there's this big conspiracy ever since then to have it covered up. And that's when I'm starting to think that this it's a we're living in this fascinating time, and we have been living there for quite a while, where you just have more and more pop culture, more films, more TV shows, all kinds of genres, from comedies and fantasy, some of them, to more espionage and UFO oriented stories being told, where it's constantly the focal point is a government conspiracy. The government was behind it. So I was thinking, okay, this is interesting. Let me just start counting up how many times this element turns up, and then I'll analyze the text of these films and these TV shows and see what it tells us about why are we living in a world where conspiracies just sell. Because if they do, it must be touching something in the public. That are we being more distrustful of organizations, of the government, of business, any of the large bureaucracies that are running the world, maybe even academia, that you have these organizations of power and influence, and are we just so suspicious and we don't trust them for some reason, that there's this button that's pushed in us when somebody tries to entertain us, and then there's a revelation. Aha, there's something underhanded going on here. And that organizations that you thought were created to watch over us, to serve us, what if they're actually corrupt? And they're doing something, and as a result, our lives are worse off for it. And then what can be behind the reasons of these faceless elites that are running these organizations, for why they're trying to manipulate the world. So that was the triangle. It was the seed of the
All
interest. And
parts of the Bermuda Triangle, baby. So it's kind of funny because I feel like that's the first time that I was, exposed to anything super crazy like that. Going back to our childhoods where it was spoken about, and it just seemed weird almost that it was spoken about. It's like, well, what's going on there? We don't know. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. So you learn about the Bermuda Triangle. You read about or watch this documentary on it, and then what? At that point, were you in academia? Were you already a writer? Were you looking for ideas? It was just kind of you stumbled upon it. Where were you in your life when that happened, and then where did it take you?
Right. At that time, I was already working for St. Peter's University, where I'm a professor of communication and media culture. And I have a specialization in film studies as well. So I teach classes on various classes on films, including one on the on conspiracy theory films. Well, that would come along later after I wrote a book about it.
I want to take
But
your classes. That sounds so interesting.
I very much say so myself. I think it's intriguing, and yeah, so I'm teaching these mass communication classes, the film classes, and then I was thinking, and also at the same time, I'm working on fiction writing as well. Originally, I was trained at the film school at the University of Miami, studying screenwriting there. Later moved into academia, so I want to tell my own stories too. Later on, I would write three novels, two of them science fiction and paranormal thriller plots going on. Where one of them there's very mild hints of worries over conspiracies, but that's where I was. I'm studying mass media and audiences. Really, that's my my academic route, and that I want to understand that intersection between the individual, the audience member, that person sitting in the theater, and how are they making sense of the entertainment. And I ran across this mini series, and I thought, okay, let's take a dive into this and write this history of how conspiracy theories are unfolding in entertainment, and then I go and do a parallel study of during the various decades what kind of quote unquote real conspiracy fears are out there. What are the real conspiracy theories?
And what did I'm just so curious about the entire topic. What did you find, I guess, like, was there pattern spotting? Meaning, this is why conspiracies happen. This is the type of personality that buys into conspiracies. These are the personalities that will never buy into a conspiracy. And then sometimes the conspiracies are true, right? Like,
Right.
what did you learn from all of this? Like, what are the, are- if we're writing an article, we don't want to bury the lead. What are the things that you extracted about humanity and conspiracy theories?
The most interesting pattern that I was finding in so many of the films and TV programs is this recurring theme of the conspiracy theorist who's being written off as somebody kooky, as someone who can't be taken seriously. He's spinning a yarn about everything. And then one time, he's right, or she stumbles onto the truth. And then as you're watching this, you're really identifying with this. Well, it's this outsider figure. It's like an underdog figure,
Right.
somebody who believes and they feel like they have the truth on their side, and nobody wants to pay attention to them. So it's usually this sort of an outsider figure. Could be a somebody really kooky and zany who everyone else already laughing at for believing all the crazy things, or it can be some small time reporter, a small time police officer, or maybe even a government agent that everyone's really writing off as not being anyone important or really promising within the bureaucracy. And then they investigate some kind of something that looks like a small time crime or something insignificant. And then it's almost like pulling on the string and a giant yarn starts unfolding. And then you're going to have this outsider, this loner, the idealist, the kooky conspiracy theorist, and they're proven right. because the more they're pulling on the string, the higher and higher up into the highest echelons of society, and they reach up and they realize that the people who are running things, the business powers, the governmental powers, essentially any organization that has a great deal of influence are actually doing really nefarious things.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting. It's almost like was it Thomas? Was it Thomas Campbell? The hero's journey. It like you
Right.
just described, like the hero's journey, right? Like there's an underdog, there's a problem, they figure it out, they get some help from their best friends, and then they go on this journey to discover it. Is that what you found? Like why humans need conspiracy theories? Like what emotional gap does the conspiratory thinking fill that rational explanations don't?
Well, it's very similar to that Campbell paradigm of the mythic hero, where it's always
Joseph
someone.
Campbell, right? Yeah, it was Joseph
Joseph, there we
Campbell.
go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Where he's showing how essentially the way that people have always been telling stories is that you have an ordinary person who's suddenly called on a journey, and it's going to be a journey of self-discovery, and then on the end, he's going to come out a wiser person. He's going to be enlightened in some way. Essentially, that's the journey of the conspiracy theorists as well. You're absolutely right, and that here you have this person who might have been given to already believing, or someone who's an art skeptic, except then he stumbles over something and then his eyes are really opened. And then he's going on a real, not just an outward journey to take on the evil conspirators, but an inward journey as well to realize where his biases lie before. And actually, the world is much more complicated and much more corrupt than he ever would have wanted to believe.
So so that's interesting. Yeah. So it's basically exposing this like scary underbelly that's trying to manipulate us. So is it do you think it's us trying to grab more control of our environment, or is it just curiosity? Or because it sounds like like the last step is that there's always this mean organization that's got
Right.
a plot, right? So the curiosity turns into, well, I don't want that mean organization controlling things, I want to have control of that.
I think it's really it's both of them that when people are very hardcore believers in conspiracy theories, there's this feeling of superiority about them, right? They feel like they're the that they're the arch skeptics. They ask questions that nobody else does, right? And they like to call everybody else just sheep, and that we just go along and just take in all of the official version of events. And if you're a conspiracy theory believer, you're going to be much more open minded. You're going to be a much more critical thinker. You feel slightly superior at that point, and then yeah, absolutely. After that, since we are living in we've always been living in complicated times, but it seems like they're becoming more and more complicated, and people are just I think just generally very worried that you have all this technology, all of these really complicated organizations around us having so much influence over our lives, that what if the people who are pulling the strings don't have our best interests at heart?
Yeah, and I feel like you mentioned information and being in the information age. I feel like every podcast that I come across that I find intriguing has to do with some sort of conspiracy. And then of course you ring the big bell when it's like it was proven true. And you're like, I knew it. Like this is like, it's so crazy. It's like I wonder how do people get to the do you find it gosh, I mean, I don't even I always have a healthy skepticism about what mass information is and mass media and government communication. It's always like, wait a minute, do you think that it's just the people that have gone into this completely tinfoil hat paranoid stage that is almost soiled the maybe more rational, healthy skeptics in in the crew? Is it because I feel like when you say the word conspiracy, it's almost like it immediately discredits you. right? Like you sound
Absolutely.
crazy if you
Mhm.
say I'm a conspiracy theorist around, X, Y, and Z, and we'll get into the X, Y, and Z in a minute. But I'm curious, like, I don't even know if I have a question around it, but like, how do you separate yourself from that paranoia and just say
Right.
I'm a healthy
Right.
skeptic, you know?
Sure, that's absolutely true. That you just hit the nail right on the head there. But how do we deal with this in society? And that so many people, like the vast majority of Americans, according to various polls, believe in at least one major conspiracy theory, and it is good to have a healthy level of skepticism. I tell most people, think about what when journalists are being trained and what they're always told, that if your mother says she loves you, check it out. Go anything at its face value. Have a good, healthy amount of skepticism for organizations of power, because as we have the old saying, right, that power corrupts, and
Yeah.
that absolute power would corrupt absolutely. So it is good to be skeptical of everyone, of the government. Of Big technology, of corporations, the military, academia, even be skeptical of everybody, but and then we come to that point where we ask, okay, but how can we see where's the line between believing that the COVID vaccines were made by alien nanotechnology from Roswell,
Mhm.
and they're reading your mind, and that's why you need the tinfoil hat, and the healthy rational skepticism about whether or not people in positions of power might be abusing it.
I mean, it's getting more and more difficult to sound like a rational person, though, because I feel like, especially, and there's a perfect segue into your study of the UFO phenomena or UAPs, because I, you know there's a documentary that just came out called Disclosure. I'm sure you've seen it, where you've got very respectable people that are very high up in the military, very high up in the government, very high up in our sciences, that are basically confirming, like, a lot of the conspiracy theories behind the UFO phenomenon. And I guess, what is the UFO culture and everything surrounding UFOs reveal about human psychology more than the extraterrestrials? Like, I'm more curious about, like, the people that have, you know, latched onto it and have, from where I sit, they're heroes, right? Like, they're breaking news, and they're communicating with, humanity about this stuff.
Oh, absolutely, and the documentary you were mentioning, that was my Thanksgiving viewing. I was
Yeah,
just watching.
so good, right?
Yes, yeah, and it's so remarkable that you have so many people. They're from all across the political aisle, and they're all open-minded, and they're saying that they've seen documents and they've heard testimony from these whistleblowers that there's something there. I mean, obviously, there's something in the skies, and that we have all the radar signatures and the videos of these UFO slash UAP. So there's something there, but what is it? And it was fascinating to see people like high-ranking government officials
Crazy,
in,
right?
in the president's administration, and they're saying, "Okay, I'm very open-minded about this. This we need to find out, get to the bottom of what are they, because it appears that it's something fantastic, something out of the ordinary." In terms of in terms of UFO belief, and what I was always really interested in is looking at the various parallels that you can draw between UFO beliefs and then religious beliefs as well. And as a matter of fact, even the entire mindset, I would argue, of a conspiracy theorist is very similar to those who are very ardently following any religion, where the belief system is trying to look for some kind of a hidden structure to the world, where, let's say, religion would say, well, life is complicated. I don't know where I came from. I'm trying to explain this. And there's some kind of there's a purpose. And then there's a benevolent deity, and he's doing things for a reason We're just not able to understand what it is. And so then the conspiracy theory is the same way. It's trying to find the answers to why is the world so complicated and so scary. But there they're looking for some kind of a malevolent being, and behind all of this, they're looking for the Illuminati and the New World Order. And that's what I was noticing with the history of the UFO phenomenon too. That so oftentimes it takes on shadings of a belief that's very close to religion. And there have been through history various UFO cults that have sprung up. Some of them going back to the 1960s in Europe. And there was in the late 1990s here in the U.S. The remember the Heaven's Gate UFO cult, where they committed the mass suicide. So
Mm.
those things can get very scary and very disturbing. But here you're noticing a sort of a parallel about this being our encounter with UFOs and these supposed aliens from them are very, very similar to the stories of humans encountering divine beings that would later be written as religion. And then you have this attempt to explain how you're interacting with the aliens, and that you have those who are very happy and that this encounter is happening because hopefully this will one day bring the aliens forth, and they're going to bring about good things for the world. Others are going to be more worrisome. That do you have some kind of an evil agenda here? Are the UFOs like demonic, like in religion? But you have this very similarity. I would argue that the very hardcore UFO believer is always going to be thinking, well, how is this going to be impacting the world? That all of the mess that we're in, either it will make it worse or it's going to bring about some sort of a nirvana. When you look at the history of the abductee phenomenon, or back in the 1950s, there was a contactee phenomenon, and that oftentimes the stories where these people told was very similar to stories of prophets in various religions. I mean, there too you have almost like this Campbellian character, somebody very ordinary, and they suddenly come in contact with the divine. And they're chosen to be a messenger, and the same way you have so many who claimed to have been abducted by UFOs or communicating with them. The same way they're saying that, yes, I have been chosen to spread the word about how we should live more like the aliens, and they would go into these various explanations of what the aliens told them about their home world and their governmental systems and technology and things like that. So if we would only live more like that, and they picked me, lowly little old me, to come and be the messenger and bring you the word.
So interesting. So it's almost like, I mean, when you describe it that way, it's like, oh yeah, some of these people are definitely mentally ill, right? Where they want to feel special and they want to, say that they've had this communication. Do you feel like I saw some patterns in your work where you were talking about like there seems to be like spikes in like UFO sightings when there's political or cultural instability. Is that like a consistent thing around the globe that when people are sort of anxious, they see more UFOs?
Right, that when we're really worried about the world falling apart, and then we're wishing, what if something were to come from the outside and then help us out? That perhaps that's when imaginations can run wild, with people. Or the hardcore believer is going to say that, well, when there are moments of unrest and wars, maybe that's when the aliens are just so much more interested in what. Right. Exactly. And then when entertainment jumps on the bandwagon, you have the film like The Day the Earth Stood Still, with the whole plot is about how the alien comes out of the flying saucer, to tell us to stop or warring ways and building nuclear weapons.
I was gonna say, I mean, like some of the stuff that probably just in the past year or two, just through, like online videos of like guys like Joe Rogan and stuff, like some of the stories are very compelling. Like there was a group of students in Africa that all had the same sighting and all had these aliens communicating with them telepathically. And I feel like they didn't want to be special. They were just a bunch of kids. They were they were like, "Leave me alone." There was a Harvard professor, right, a Harvard psychologist that was interviewing them, who essentially was ended up ruining his career because of it, because he was called, a loon for taking them seriously. And it's like, I guess I think there was another one, the other movie about the guy that was just like a hunting guy, small community, and he got abducted. That guy didn't want any attention, right? Like sometimes it happens to people that you're like, they don't want to be a part of this thing. They're not a UFO conspiracist. Something happened to them, which I guess leads me to my next question is like, have you found any super compelling evidence of the reality of UFOs, or extraterrestrial life based on the research that you've done for your books or any evidence that you've examined?
Mm. Oh, sure. I am very open-minded. I'm definitely very, very open-minded. I need to be careful about and where is that line between what is plausible and then when we're going off into territory of complete fantasy or implausibility. But I am very open-minded, like those cases that you mentioned with the school children, and then how from the very beginning they all told the exact same
Exactly.
story.
Yeah.
Since they've grown up, they're still telling the same story. And that if you want somebody to believe that there's some kind of a conspiracy to make these kids lie, to train them so perfectly, I mean, that sounds, I think, even a little more unbelievable than they saw something fantastic, that they saw a UFO, or the psychiatrist you were mentioning, John Mack, who was studying them and then the abductees for Harvard. That's very. The book that he wrote about it is very, very compelling, especially because of who he is. That he started out as a skeptic about the entire phenomena.
Yeah. Yeah.
That he explains that he went into this to try and find out what might be behind, what's the real reason that people are having these strange memories and buried memories of abduction. So let's find out the truth. I mean, aliens, come on, that's ridiculous. And he says that his eyes were open, that he changed his mind. So if someone who is going in as a skeptic and they change their minds, I'm very impressed.
Yeah,
Especially
it's compelling, right? Especially when they're Harvard educated, right? You're just like,
right, right.
okay, something's happening here, right?
Sure, sure. And these days, over the last couple of years, I have been very impressed by all of the stories of the radar signatures and airplanes where you have pilots. You have the gun cameras, you have the radar, and they're all saying the exact same thing. Like there's the now famous Nimitz incident where you have two fighter jets, and both fighter jets have two pilots in them. So there are four people there, and four people are seeing with their eyes the same thing. The equipment on both planes is indicating the same thing. You have the same radar signatures coming from the ground. And then I'm going to say, come on now, don't tell me that this was nothing but Venus through cloud formations. That at that point, I'm very, very open minded. That there's something here that's not something as plain as a bird that flew past the camera.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something there, but I am interested in it seems like there's a running theme where it's kind of like apocalyptic themes seem really comforting to people. Is that something that you've seen in your work, where it's like some people are just drawn to it, right? They just want to feel like, oh gosh, that's the world is ending, but I'm going to have a hand in helping it not end. That type of thing.
Mhm. Oh, sure, sure. Those who are looking for aliens to coming as saviors, they're afraid that we're facing the apocalypse. Others are going to be afraid that we're about to bring the apocalypse about, and then the aliens will come and they'll enslave us. It'll be really horrible. So, absolutely, that is well. As a matter of fact, I'm also in the process of editing a book of essays about the end of the world and popular culture and film. So that's in the works. And there
That's an
And
interesting topic.
we're looking, asking the same question. Why do we have so many movies and TV shows and video games about the apocalypse and zombies and the collapse of everything? Because I think that there's a really solid, plausible reason that things can go awry so easily. Technology can run away from us. We have all kinds of unstable terrorist organizations over the world. Wars can break out so easily that when we sit down and watch these films and or play video games, right? Some people entertain themselves by shooting zombies in the video game. That's almost like you're sitting down and watching a safe scare that acknowledges that yes, you're not crazy for being so worried about the very near future, and somebody else is worried about the same thing, and they're telling me this story about it. And the stories, can be very different. You can have the stories about how the problem is how we don't get along, that human beings are actually worse than the zombies, or how there's hope that we can rebuild, or forget about it. If we let this come about, there is going to be no rebuilding. So these are the various fears I think most people have, and that's why we're so fascinated by the apocalyptic story. In the same way that if you go and think about aliens, and if you're entertaining the thought that they could be real, then they have technology that is so incredibly more advanced than what we have, is that we will be basically at their mercy. Well, that's hope and pray if they're real, that they're friendly. Because if they're not, there's absolutely nothing that we can do about it.
Yeah, we're toast. It's interesting. I think it was I forget his name. Guy that was on Rogan podcast.
Hancock, Graham
Graham
Hancock.
Hancock, when he r- his theory seems to be that it's almost like our collective unconscious remembering these apocalyptic things that have happened to us, that there have been like these mass extinctions throughout the earth's history where only a few humans survived, and then we kind of reset the clock, the technological clock, and that'll explain the pyramids, that the pyramids are really some sort of battery. And it's really, I mean, a couple of years ago hearing that, I was like, well, that's a little far-fetched. And now all of a sudden it's like they're discovering these things underneath the pyramids, and you're like, oh my God, it's like these coil things, like it is a generator underneath the pyramids. Maybe they did go in a different direction and have different type of technology, and maybe there was a massive reset. All these religions talking about a major flood, and then the major flood, like, and then you look at the topographical things that Graham Hancock was showing, where it's like, if you look at the United States and the way the Midwest looks, it's like, oh yeah, it looks like water just rushed over the entirety of North America. And you're like, makes sense. That's a little scary. Maybe that is our collective unconscious remembering some sort of apocalyptic event. Crazy to think about, man. Um,
Absolutely. Mhm.
so you mentioned, you talk about, like, in the philosophy of Christopher Nolan, um, what aspects of Nolan's storytelling resonate most with our sort of evolving consciousness?
Well, Nolan is also interested in it, and I hope that he will still have a very long career because I'm a very big fan of his films. But you do have this recurring theme in several of them where it's somebody's grappling with what is reality. And then is the reality that he's seeing, the reality that's on the outside. When you have circumstances suddenly just crushing down and on that individual, how will it change them? Like just recently, I was watching Oppenheimer, where yeah, you have this person very driven by very complex ideological and political and philosophical views, but then he goes and runs smack into reality that you have a war and you have this horrible enemy, and then how do you reconcile all of this? Or films like Tenet or Inception, where they're to really delving, especially Inception, I'm a big fan of,
Yeah.
because there he's really delving into do we sense reality as it really is, or are we somehow been programmed into not seeing or seeing some kind of a false consciousness? And what is a linear reality? Because with Tenet, then the people are jumping back and forth
I
in
mean,
time.
you got to think about, there's got to be some, I mean, was it Chase Hughes? I think is the ex-military guy. He was just on a podcast talking about how there was a gentleman who, when he took like microdose DMT and then put these red lasers, like, a laser that you're using to create a straight line. And when you look at the red laser, they see basically the matrix. Like they're seeing symbols and different details that, like, if you look up, you could see into the wall or up the wall, and it almost looks like programming of reality. And when he saw it, he said he started crying. Like he was just, like, gobsmacked by it. Now, granted, he was on, probably the world's most powerful hallucinogenic with DMT, um, but it was microdosed, and his sense was it was not a hallucination, that it was something that was based in reality. But I'm a little obsessed with with the the theories behind this being, um, you know, completely false, and it's just our interpretation of what it is. And um, it's something that I'm a little obsessed with. It's just like, I'm curious what you think. Like, is this a simulation? Are we in a simulation? Is it just our brains trying to ingest reality, and we can only take in so much? And perhaps as we evolve, we'll be able to take in more of reality. What do you think
Mhm.
on a
Sure.
personal level?
Well, absolutely. I think what's going on here is it's just part of our DNA. It's just part of our psychology to ask this question: is this all there is that we can see with our eyes and touch with our hands? Is this you're born, you struggle a whole bunch through your life. You might have some good times now and again, and then it's over and you die. But is there more meaning to this? Is there something bigger outside of what I can see? There's a big universe out there that where did it come from? I mean, you talk to physicists, people in quantum physics and string theory. Most of it, I can barely understand. Maybe every third or fourth word whenever they start talking to you, but they're talking about an invisible world. Which they'll tell you that, well, their gadgets and their machines can measure this. I look at it and say, okay, if you say so, you have the beeping little button there, and he will tell you things that are almost out of a fantasy, a hidden realm. That you have, subatomic particles that are connected together in strings. And something can happen here, and something happens on the other side of the universe. So it's just all of this is just part of the human need to know: is there something much bigger?
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah. Sorry, keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, that our fascination with are just what lies, beneath the senses, and if there's something sentient there, if there's some kind of force that's controlling it, and then to what end is it controlling it? Do they want what's best for us in a happy and painless life, or are they making life as complicated as painful as it is? And so when this turns up in some really fascinating films, I mean, this is the core of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
said, like the person thought that he's seeing into the Matrix. That it's just speaking to that very human need to know that, is there something outside of my field of view that's controlling me,
Yeah.
and is it hurting me or not? Basically, the conspiracy theorists just thinking the same way. Who
Yeah.
are the hidden people behind the scenes that are running my life? So
Yeah.
I want to know that as much as I want to know what quantum physics is trying to
Yeah,
tell.
I mean, I was gonna say, like, it's almost like it goes in so many different directions, because I think COVID changed a lot of people's minds, right? Like, it's like, oh, are we in a golden age of conspiracy theories, or is it just that it was so darn obvious? Like it's almost like the people that have been manipulating us and our behavior and our psyches got sloppy. it's like, it's like, how, when you realize just how we were being so definitively manipulated throughout the course of COVID and how it was handled. I feel like it's opened a lot of people's eyes, and it's like, well, wait a minute. I told a story yesterday. I posted this story on YouTube. And I'll just add it as a little anecdote, which you might find intriguing. But back in 2012, Facebook had just gone public, and I had written a blog post prior to them going public saying that I didn't think that Mark Zuckerberg was fit to be CEO, that he should, just like Sergey and Brin from Google, name a CEO and stay on as the founder. But CEO is very different than founder. He's got a fiduciary responsibility. He's got, Sarbanes Oxley and all these different things. And a television producer from a very well respected, I won't say the network, very well respected network asked me to be on a financial news show. The network was not right, was not left. And I was talking to the producer, and she explained it to me that it would be myself and another person, kind of like the way, we're split screen right now. And then there'll be two hosts that will be asking us questions and we'll go back and forth. And as she's speaking to me, I said, look, I know you found me because of the blog post that I wrote saying that I thought Zuckerberg should step down. I don't really fully feel that anymore. He's done a really good job. He's handling himself well. I'm kind of in this gray area, like wait and see. And she stopped and she said, no, you feel that way. And I kind of chuckled like you did. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm like, no, but and she stopped. She's like, no, Chris, you feel that way. And then I chuckled again and she kind of realized that I wasn't fully getting it. And she said, Chris, this is a point counterpoint segment. And she said, you need to feel that way. And she said, Chris, it's theater. So in 2012, an executive producer of a major financial news program that I was just a guest on literally said to me, it's theater. And I was like, what on earth just happened? It's, an eye opening experience that I posted yesterday because I want people to be aware that that's how media does operate. They need to enrage us and they need to have us on edge and they need to see the arguments for us to engage with media so they could sell more ads so that they can have more ad revenue. And it's this sort of vicious cycle, which is why I love this platform where you and I could have a discussion. We could sit here for 5 hours and just chit chat and we're beholden to nobody. And, I think that that's empowering, I suppose. So I'm curious, like, does loneliness and disconnection play in the rise of the sort of belief-based communities? Like, was it because of COVID that we see a spike, whether that be in reality, like, hey, wait a minute, I think we're being manipulated, or people became isolated and lonely and even more paranoid, and then they went down a deeper wormhole or rabbit hole of conspiracy theories?
Sure. It definitely COVID definitely boosted it.
Yeah.
But it has been the aspect of loneliness playing into conspiracy beliefs have been there for a long time. There's a body of research on the personality types of people who fall down the rabbit hole into the most extreme conspiracy theories. And what they find is that on the one hand, they're just looking for a community that also they have other characteristics, like they might feel very powerless. They might feel like they don't have enough of a power or say so in the world. Their voice is not being listened to, and getting involved in a conspiracy community can create that connection with others who might also feel the same way, that they're being excluded, that nobody's listening to their point of view. There's this really fascinating and kind of funny and disturbing documentary about people who believe that the earth is flat.
Yeah.
And near the end, you realize that it's almost like fandom, or like, sports fandom or Star Trek fandom, where people are just looking for a community. They just want to hang out with others. They're being told by most of the people in their lives that they're crazy. And, they just want to belong. And, interestingly enough, it is also the kind of person who does ask big questions. Why are things the way they are? But then, because of various personal issues like loneliness, disconnection, powerlessness, they can be sucked down into these belief systems that say that, yes, somebody is keeping you down. There's somebody evil and malevolent out there who's trying to make your life much worse. And COVID was just so fascinating and disturbing, because that's where you really needed to watch the line, because there was legitimate skepticism, a legitimate things to concern about, like you said, with the media, well, the institutions that people distrust, the mass media is probably right at the top of it. That they're sensing this. You're watching television, and you're sensing this. That so much of it is infotainment. Let's put on two polar opposites, have them insult each other for 3 minutes, and then we cut to commercial. And that
So
it's
damaging. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So when COVID starts, and then when the vaccines are coming along, suddenly there bad things happening on both sides, both on the conspiracy believer sides who are telling us that you don't take the vaccine because it's a concerted effort to kill you and put nanotechnology and to control your mind, and it's just completely off the wall, things like that. But then, on the other hand, people who question the origin of it are quickly shot down as crazy conspiracy theorists. That, those who claim that it could have come from a lab leak. I mean, now, as of right as we speak, it's most likely it came from the lab leak. But all of a sudden, you're not allowed to talk about that because now you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, you were a crazy person if you said that
Mhm.
in the early days. Absolutely crazy. Now it's like, well, wait, it's true. They were right. I think that that's the thing that, especially now, I feel like there's so many compounding factors that you just mentioned that's research based that is scary, meaning loneliness makes people, gravitate toward these conspiracy theories. But then the fact that there's so much information out there that those that are in power, that were pushing media in order to influence thoughts and ideas, are kind of losing that power by virtue of the information. And but I also think that's a little bit dangerous too. Like somebody's got to be in control, right? Like somebody's got to like oversee what's going on, at the zoo. um, but it does go down this weird avenue when things are starting to be proven as true, right? When you break through the sort of intellectual elite barriers where, like, I mentioned the pyramids earlier, where it's like you look at the guy that was, holding all the truths that they said were the pyramids were to be, completely gospel and nothing else could be true, where you're just like, oh, he was just doing that to make money and sell his books. Like, and it's crazy to think that the world thought these things just because one or two people decided that that's the way it was, instead of being curious and exploring it. I think it's a fascinating fine line between cultivating curiosity and independent thinking and having those people that are going to go and prove some of these things, the conspiracy was there, versus because we're all stuck on the internet and, obsessed over things like COVID, that it turns into psychosis and sort of, super crazy town. Um, which leads me to your study of horror. what what I'm curious, like what fear appears consistently across all cultures? Like, is there one specific thing that we're all terrified of?
It seems like when it comes to supernatural beings and supernatural horrors, we all over the world we've always been afraid of vampires and something with that interferes with the blood, something that infects you, that taints you. So I was always fascinated by how the vampires are constantly turning up, and then you have vampire entertainment, which of course goes and enters the realm of conspiracy theories. Back in the 90s, there was this role playing game. It's turned into a short lived TV series about how you have these secret societies of vampires and they're running the world. And it's like all behind the
Yeah, I
scenes.
don't know about all of that. I want to hear. Tell me more about. Like, you said vampire stuff. I thought about Twilight, and I'm like, okay, like that was popular, and then Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that was popular. The Tom Cruise movie, that was popular. Like, I don't. Tell me about that. Tell me about the conspiracies.
It comes and goes in these waves. That we haven't had a big vampire wave in a couple of years now. So
We
who
should
knows? We
start one.
might. Yeah, maybe a new one will come along. But it's interesting that it's really at its core. It's this fear of somebody taking over our wills, because that's going to be and infecting us, because that's going to be the through line. Maybe I mean there. I say that I'm finding similarities between conspiracy fears as well. That essentially the vampire is this creature who will invade your body, infect you, and then they're able to control you. So you're losing your autonomy. They can cloud your mind, and that can bring about all kinds of results to you. Sometimes you have the sexy vampires who go and make the experience pleasurable, and then most often though there's the worry, there's the concern about the loss of autonomy, and that
Yeah.
what if there's a power structure, people, infection, something that takes away my control over myself. Well, that and serial killers. We also are fascinated by serial killers of all type. Where there, I would also attribute it to how when you hear about real serial killers, nothing's more frightening than imagining the person who lives down the block who looks completely normal,
Yeah.
and you don't know if he has body parts in his fridge. So it's on one hand, one is completely hyperbolic, and that probably most of us are not literally afraid of a vampire coming to bite us. We might be afraid of pandemics or some form of misinformation controlling our autonomy. But whether or not you have people who are capable of such horrific things, if they're out there, that's now plausible.
It's interesting that we're talking about vampires. I do think it's like a deeper concern about the loss of autonomy and free will that you're talking about. But I also think I think it was Jordan Peterson was saying that there are psychological studies that like vampire is one of the tropes of like a sexual trope that women love. It's like cowboy, vampire, surgeon. Um, I forget what one of the other ones are, but it's kind of interesting, right? Like fear based, and then you know, sex symbol. I think it is like, ooh, we are bizarre creatures, man. Like,
Absolutely, yeah, it's all tangled up there between pain and pleasure.
yeah,
That's what comes down to, fear and then desire. That you have so many stories of the male vampire coming onto the woman victim's bedroom. There's that invasion, and then it's there's a takeover. She's being bitten. However, it brings about a pleasurable experience. And really, there, if you're looking at specifically what the vampires are doing, it's very sexual, right? You see most often it's going to take place in a bedroom. That if the victim is a female, she's going to be very scantily dressed. When the vampire gets excited, then his teeth elongate. You have the puncturing of the flesh. There's fluid exchange. So the two, the fear, the pleasure, the pain, it's all completely tied together with that. So maybe that's why we love the trope so much.
yeah, it's fascinating stuff. It's so you're making the connection that I find fascinating between like UFOlogy and religion. Do you think it's become like a modern religion?
Absolutely. When you notice the parallels between the religious stories of how people come in contact with a divine being, who then wants them to, teach the world or bring a positive message, it's exactly similar. And then in the 20th century, it's really the age of technology, just progressed so far, and then science is able to disprove so much of the supernatural, that people still have that yearning to understand understand that bigger world, the bigger picture that explains why are things functioning the way that they do. We can't see behind the scenes. There's something unseen going on there. So instead of demons and angels and gods interfering and shaping our lives, and then you have a new religion like ufology, where it's going to explain things like that. Well, it's actually the aliens that built the pyramids, or you have the aliens that were actually inspiring all of the prophets. That wasn't you know
It's kind of crazy. Like you watch some of these shows that sometimes can be far reaching and silly, but like Ancient Aliens, there's some stuff that they're pointing out that's like in caves in Australia, and
Mhm.
like the drawing on this rock, it looks like almost like a 1950s robot, like right? Like it looks like this almost, looks like a 10-year-old drew it, but it looks like this vision of what you would see in like a bad campy UFO movie from the 50s where it's like bitty bitty bop type of like like yeah, I just like I find it fascinating that like a lot of the UFO contact stories resemble mythological encounter stories, right? And like ancient encounter stories across cultures, right? Like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, sure. That basically every religion always said that their rules for right and wrong came from some otherworldly source. So now the aliens have just replaced that. Like you have the ancient astronaut theorists who will tell you that no, it wasn't a big cloud bank over Mount Sinai that was talking to Moses. No, no, no. That was actually a disguised a giant UFO. And then when the laws were carved into the tablets. That was actually a laser carving into it. Except, the people writing it at the time they had no conception of alien visitation or why was Moses always glowing but doesn't burn, and there's a bush that's glowing but doesn't burn. Well, maybe it was a spotlight right from the UFO hitting them, and for ancient humans they would not have a conception of how that would work. So absolutely that you see these parallels where previously we would use a supernatural explanation for the world. Our rules are right or wrong, and now the aliens are replacing that. And now it's not gods and angels that come and talk to you. It's an alien, and they abduct you, and then they go and tell you how to save the world so the environment doesn't fall apart or that we stop nuclear war. So very, very, very similar. Absolutely.
So fascinating. I'm like, I, it's honestly, it's part of why I started this podcast is to have discussions like this because I'm just so curious about it. And I'm having Dr. Thomas Campbell, who's the author of my big theory of everything, my big toe, and he's a physicist that has been conducting these scientific experiments for 35 years that where he's come up with a hypothesis that he believes that we are living in a simulation, and he talks about how somebody asked him about UFOs and UAPs, and he's like, well, if you're the creator of the simulation, he just feels like they're little reminders to us that what we experience that we think is reality isn't reality. That it's kind of like a little bit of sprinkle of mysticism or something that's a little different or unexplainable is the creator, whoever that might be, just reminding us, which I thought was really fascinating. And I'm curious. I didn't think about this question before, but it's dawning on me now as you're speaking. Is you and I are peers, right? Demographic. What do your students think about all this? Like when you're talking about and having these cool conversations about conspiracy theories, is there a kid in the back going, "No way, dude, the Earth is flat"? Like, what are you seeing from your students?
Luckily, thank goodness, I didn't have anybody who believes that the Earth is flat.
Okay.
But there's an interesting combination of people who are very open-minded. Sometimes I had a couple who said that no, everything's being run by Illuminati. I don't care what you say. Where's the evidence for? No, I know it. I know it in my heart. I mean, that's a problem I think with many people where it's belief based on because I feel it in my heart that I wanted to
Got
do
it.
that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than because some kind of an evidence showed it to me. Yeah, so, but most of them are going to be fairly open-minded yet skeptical.
Mm.
Where and I keep telling them to always think of that balance. You want healthy skepticism, but at the same time, you know that there are bad people out there who abuse their authority, and you need to be skeptical of everybody. So we have an interesting mix. There's one person who said that absolutely not. It is the Illuminati that runs anything. I don't care. Nothing is as the history book said. I just believe that. So what I actually tried to do with them, I have an interesting exercise where I prove to them that I'm the Antichrist, and they. So I can prove it right here.
And I'm all ears. Let's go. Let's hear it.
it's part of this exercise where they have to create their own conspiracy theory to be able to realize how easy it is to manipulate information and trick people. Mm. And how you can go and cherry pick information, this and that, and just go and put it together into one big picture that's completely bogus. So I tell them that. I will prove to you that I'm the Antichrist. That if you look at all the mythologies of the Antichrist, look at the number 13 turning up a lot, all kinds of references to violence, to control, major apocalyptic things. So I tell them, look, where I'm working. I work for a Jesuit university. Well, the Jesuits trained Adam Weishaupt, who was the founder of the Illuminati. So that could be a connection. That is interesting. And then there's my middle name as William. So it's Barna William Donovan. But if you take the Barna away, William Donovan was the founder of the CIA. So there's some kind of a connection there. And then the street address of the school is on John F. Kennedy Boulevard. So we got the Illuminati, we got the Jesuits, we got the CIA, we have JFK in there, and then
Perfect stew for a conspiracy, right?
and then the final step is what I tell them, look at the mailing address of the school. It's 2641. If you add it up, it adds up to 13. That's a satanic number, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's funny because as you're saying it, and then like as human beings, the way our psychology is structured, as you were saying it, I was thinking about myself because I'm like, you're like Jesuit University. I'm like, I went to Loyola University in Maryland, Jesuit University. You're like, my middle name is William, and I was like, oh my gosh, my middle name is Guy, but I'm named after my grandfather who named his son William. Like, and like, like, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, wait a minute, are we both the Antichrist? Like, it's
Sure,
kind of crazy how we
just
just
about
make these,
anyone's the Antichrist.
yeah, it's like we like make all these connections in our brains, and then I do think the best response that I heard to this sort of cabal, there is this sort of Illuminati, comes from George Carlin, the comedian, where he was being interviewed, and he's like, they may not meet in a back room going, "Mwahahaha," but he's like, these people went to the same schools, these people have the same agenda, these people, they worship money, they don't worship, spirituality. So when you come from that ilk, and it was basically like they all do the same things to keep their power, to keep their grip on these different things, and that is the Illuminati. That it's not like 10, 10 dudes doing a ceremony in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
So I found that to be a much more seemingly intellectual approach to the issue.
Right. That's more of a system where you have people in positions of power in these various organizations that have power, and when they're just focused on, say, making more money, that almost worries me less than when they're thinking of ways of improving the world and improving your life, whether you like it or not. About let's make up more and more surveillance technologies to improve your life, to make it a little bit safer, because most people are not as superior as we are, and as intellectuals as we are. Most people are stupid and can't think for themselves. So let's go and engineer them so they're moving in the proper direction. That let's go and what they're doing research on implants, microchip implants into the brain. So when people are thinking about how to go and steer society in the right direction, whether or not they like it, that's when it really bothers me. But usually when we have too many very powerful people who talk a little too much about wanting to change the world, it worries me, because usually that can come down to me controlling your life, whether or not you like it.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. It's like under the guise of
Mhm.
we're doing good, and it's almost like we know better than you do. Don't worry about it. We're gonna surveil you 24/7. which I thought was it's very interesting. It's kind of like when social media first hit, I would talk about how, 1984 had it wrong. It's like we're not Big Brother's not watching us, we're Big Brother. Like we're the ones that are just watching each other. And that was they just snapped a finger and then it happened by having these devices in our hands. So it's interesting. So what do you think would happen to our society if I don't think it's ever going to happen, but like, aliens land on the front lawn of the White House, right? If there's real proof of extraterrestrial life, do you think it just like shatters obviously it's going to shatter many people's perception of their reality. Um, do you think that just like makes the conspiracies through the roof and everybody becomes a conspiracy theorist, or what do you think that would do to our psyche?
Oh, that is that could be extremely chaotic,
Yeah.
and I don't think it would be unifying for a long time. And probably the if it's a sort of contact where the aliens are on Earth, we have the big motherships floating around over the planet, or they're hovering over the big cities, and they're actively taking part and now engineering our societies. That could be extremely chaotic because I think that the aliens are interesting. The whole concept of UFOs is this interesting Rorschach test that people who are fearful of an invasion, and nothing's going to change their mind. And those who are hopeful will welcome them with open arms. Let's say when you look at how people of various religious faiths are looking at aliens, there's a very large part of very fundamentalist religious movements, especially Christian fundamentalism, who declare that we think that they're real, these UFOs are real, but they're demonic. And
Well, yeah, I mean, that came up in the documentary, right? Where they were in the Pentagon and like, hey, we need to address this as a matter of national security. And they were like, whoa, don't touch it. Those are demons.
Mhm. Right, yeah, yeah. So if those who believe that, I mean, that's what they're coming from an upbringing, from background of this extreme religious faith. I don't think anything's going to change their mind easily. They're going to want to form, the resistance to fight the demons. Those we're looking at them as our saviors, they will welcome them with open arms. Who knows? Maybe that could be a problem too. What if it's a replay of the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man? The alien comes and say, "Here, I'm here to take care of all of your problems." And then maybe you should be a little bit skeptical at that point. But yeah, definitely, it will I think it would be much more polarizing and throw the world into turmoil. Now, I'm not sure how long the religious faiths are going to be impacted, because usually those who have very strong faith, they will hold on to that, no matter what. And if you have this big paradigm shattering event, then I don't. Who knows? Maybe some people would abandon their faith and say, "Oh, this proves all of our religious texts wrong." Others are not going to. Others are going to want to have the aliens be our benevolent overlords and
Right. Our
control.
saviors. Yeah.
Right.
I do find it interesting. I mentioned the sort of simulation hypothesis where Dr. Campbell in his work talks about how through his work and his summary of his whole body of work is that this is a simulation. That he says he was kind of chuckling that he satisfied the scientists as well as the priests and the religions, because when he explains it, it's that we are all one consciousness that is on earth and experiencing reality through animals and trees and plants and humans. And when we die, the consciousness then goes back into the main consciousness so that it can evolve. And he's theorized that it's to evolve into pure love, that that's the goal of the source energy. And if you take out the scientific words or the borderline science fiction words of it being a simulation, you basically explained God, right?
Absolutely. Sure.
So I find that on two ends of it explains everything. So I think that there are ways that if they do land on the front lawn of the White House, that there is an argument for it almost strengthening people's faith in terms of, oh, there's something bigger than us out there. That's fine. The whole, the whole, the whole thought of it is fascinating. So we're in this world now. Myself, I'm very much involved in it because of my company, Torque AI, where I'm doing a lot of AI work, and we do, advertisements and consulting and implementing it for businesses and all that jazz. But it's not where my question is. What do you think it means for real, not cuckoo conspiracy theorists, but like truth seekers, like the people that are, the hobbyists that are really pushing forward, that aren't beholden to any corporate entity, that don't have to shut their mouth for fear of being terminated from their job or anything along those lines. What what does it mean to them in a world of deep fakes, AI narratives, the algorithm that, the algorithm is basically exposing us, not informing us, it's exposing what we're searching for. And how has, I just feel like becoming that truth seeker is going to become more and more difficult as time goes on.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Because now anyone can sit down with a reasonably decent computer and some AI program in there and put together such really realistic fake videos and fake images, and that it's literally impossible to tell the fake from the real thing. So at this point, you will have, I mean, you already do have a lot of people flooding the internet with all kinds of bogus UFO videos. That, let's say, if I see a real UFO and I go on and video it real fast, and I try to spread the word, go and put it up on YouTube, probably the reactions would be what would be my reaction. Is that really good AI? Or
I'd be like,
forget
yeah,
about
it's fake, totally fake. Yeah, totally
it.
AI. Yeah.
Sure. So, if there's some kind of a conspiracy to cover up the existence of the aliens or to make the world not take them seriously, then probably what they would be doing is flooding the internet with all kinds of really bogus and debunkable videos about aliens and all kinds of crazy stuff, so that people will ignore the honest truth seeker.
Yeah. That's a little scary. That's a little scary. Do you, in your research with conspiracies, have you ever stumbled upon some that you're just surprised about? You're like, whoa, I didn't even know that was a conspiracy. Like, what are some of the most unique conspiracies that you've heard of?
Let me see. Well, there are a couple of they're just really attention grabbers. One of them about the already existing giant underground tunnel systems all across the country. That thinking, where would you move the loose dirt? That would just take so much time and so much money and technology that you can't keep that secret. I guess technically it could be done if you have the right equipment for it, but that is a bit too much. The flat Earth conspiracy theory, that just completely blows my mind away. How people can latch on to that, because oftentimes when I looked at things that the flat Earth believers are posting on the internet, oftentimes I'm wondering, okay, how much of this is real? Maybe there's a little trolling going on here. I thought maybe the flat Earth Society might be like this club of scientists and this, like, nerd humor, and then let's go and how see how we can fool people who are not scientifically literate. But
I see it. Yeah, just like conduct a psychological experiment, see if you can set up
sure,
your own
sure,
wide
yeah.
conspiracy, right? Yeah, just
So,
diffuse it
so
in your
yeah.
classroom. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
however, but then you do have the people who unfortunately are the real thing, and
Yeah.
I know two people who said that they have friends who just completely fell into the flat Earth belief camp.
Crazy.
Mm.
So after all the research for all your books, like what is your relationship to conspiracy theories and the unknown? Like, have you ever experienced a moment that sort of fundamentally shifted what you believe about reality or UFOs? Like, have you ever had an experience?
Well, I had an experience years ago. This was either 95 or 96 in a home of my parents where something to this day I'm trying to think about this as critically as I possibly can, scientifically. And I told the story to a couple of scientists, friends, physicists. Physicists are incredibly skeptical. I told them the story and they're saying, I'm not sure. How can I explain it? There's got to be something. Where one night something hit my bed, I swear to God, that lifted off the legs of the bed. It was knocked off the ground and then fell back down. So this was hardwood flooring. And so with my 210 pounds on top of it going on that even if it's like falling out like a half an inch, that's gonna make a huge noise, which it did, and everybody in the house heard it. So what that was, I can't tell you. It seems, very otherworldly, very like a ghost haunting because I have been extremely, extremely skeptical about that. That, ghosts and spirits from the other side, and they're moving certain things around, but not other things. So, I there might be some things that are not quantifiable quite yet.
Right.
Some things do move around on their own. It's not something magic. There might be some kind of, electromagnetic scientific something or other that causes it, but does that give me pause. And then yeah, then also looking at the more high quality UFO accounts. Like right now, when we have the military saying that we are measuring these things, we're recording them, we're seeing them, it's right there on the hardware. Hardware doesn't make mistakes. And then I get very open minded. And also, although something else I'm open minded about is how many of these UFO sightings might also be part of a conspiracy to discredit the UFO belief. That if you, because we've already had a couple of admissions by the CIA, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article about this over the summer about how they apparently went and seeded a lot of newspapers with fake UFO stories. And then usually this was around military bases where they were doing some experimental weapons research.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't want you. They want you to think it's a UFO and not a
right.
military exercise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. And then if you create crazy enough, like we said with the AI, if you create enough debunkable, really over the top UFO stories or videos, then people will just stop taking seriously the rest of it. Oh,
So interesting too, because I feel like people don't do that mind exercise that you just like. That was a very quick, very like complicated mind exercise that I think that they addressed in the documentary where um or it might have just been Chase Hughes talking about psyops, where somebody that seems credible steps forward, and it's like a military pilot, somebody that seems to have the credentials, but you're not really sure, comes out of nowhere. He's never been in the public eye before, and all of a sudden has this, incredible footage of something. And they brought up the pilot that it looked like he was flying a helicopter, and he was, pulling up an egg shaped UFO. And I guess they eventually debunked it. And it's almost as if it sort of dovetails into exactly what you're saying. Like this guy was a military person, but was he a CIA guy that was seated to
sure.
say these things to then have them debunked to then make it look ridiculous? Like, you get thinking about that stuff and you're like, huh, that would make sense if the CIA were trying to do that.
Sure,
It's
sure.
just crazy.
Yeah, that and just you could say that if you want to stop a speeding train, don't try and block it and stop it, but go and speed it up real fast and make it jump the tracks and wreck itself. That if you can just discredit UFO believers by seeding their movement by a lot of debunkable nonsense, that's the best way not to take them seriously anymore.
That's such a good analogy. Right. Don't stop it. Make it go faster and go off the rails. Ooh, man. So what are some of the things that have popped up in your class that have been unexpected? That have the students brought anything to you, or like have been any revelations in your classes where you're like, ooh, I didn't think of it that way?
A number of them have been open to the September 11th conspiracy theories. That surprised me because with something like that, you have just so many footage, just hundreds of hours, or who knows how many hours of footage of that. We've seen that from every possible angle. The theories about it didn't crash the way it was supposed to have crashed. Those were really debunkable, but some of them are seem to have been open-minded. That's why I tell people that, well, keep your mind open, but then take a look at all points of view, even the ones that you think you really don't like, you disagree with. Take a look at that the hardest. Maybe they could be right, and they might change your mind.
So interesting. So when you're writing your books, it seems as if you're taking an approach of writing novels in order to communicate some of the ideas. It's almost like a, Ayn Rand type of a perspective, right? You're inserting your philosophy into these books. Uh, Would you ever consider writing? Have you ever written a nonfiction book, or it's all novels?
Oh, it's 3 nonfiction first, and then came 3 novels. There's the book I did on conspiracy films, and, so that's nonfiction. It's the, historical look at the movies and the conspiracy theories, and I did a study about the fandom of action-adventure films and the film violence. It's called Blood, Guns, and Testosterone. Oh, yes, I tell my student that that's another sign that I'm the Antichrist. Blood, guns, testosterone, blood splatters on the cover of the book.
Obviously, you're the Antichrist if you
Exactly.
title your book that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then the third one is was actually the first published nonfiction book I had was the Asian impact on Hollywood action films, and that has a guy with a gun on the cover too, so it's a little bit violent there. But yes, I'm coming from that background of film and audience studies, and then I wanted to tell my own stories as well, so I wrote 3 novels, well, one of which got me accused of being a conspirator myself.
What was that? What Tell us what?
It was the first novel I had published, back in 2018. It's called Confirmation, Investigations of the Unexplained. And then the plot is that what if you have some, low rent reality, show that goes and investigates the unexplained, like those things you see a million of them on the Travel Channel.
Yeah.
And then what if they go and stumble across an undeniable, unexplainable event in the world? And what happened with mine was that there are these big 20-ton granite spheres that suddenly show up all over the world with no evidence of how it came there. And then really the focus of the plot is that how people go and graft their own belief systems onto them rather than changing their belief systems, and that you have the world going at each other's throats by the time you get to the end of the book. And this is what got me accused of being a conspirator. I felt so powerful, almost like a James Bond villain.
Fantastic.
I was interviewed on a local current events program about the book when it came out, and how there's a small element to the plot about the wrong-headedness of the extreme conspiracy believers. And then we talked about a couple of other conspiracy theories, and because this was before COVID, so we touched on a little bit about the conspiracy theories about the measles vaccine, and then, sure enough, very shortly after that, there were some conspiracy blogs that called me actually like the torchbearer of the anti-conspiracy movement, and it happened around the time when there was a measles outbreak in upstate New York, and then I got blamed for that, almost like I went and gave my minions the
Why
order.
would you do that? How dare you?
Right, right, exactly.
So,
At first, I'm debunking the anti-vaccination argument, and then there's an outbreak in an unvaccinated
I mean, it
community.
makes sense to me. I connected those dots. You're definitely guilty. So, have you stumbled upon? I mean, look, I was in New York on September 11th. I lost a friend. There, seeing the documentary Loose Change was very disturbing for me because I hadn't even conceived of there being, you know, maybe not a conspiracy, but maybe they knew and just let it happen. Like that type of thing. Like, oh, maybe we need this reset. Um, has there been? anything that you've discussed in your class or your books where you've exposed a legitimate conspiracy? Because we know that conspiracies happen. We know that they're we implement conspiracies to overthrow governments. Of course we do. Um, when there's more than one person on the ground doing the nefarious thing, conspiracy, right? You're conspiring together to do the thing. Um, have you exposed any conspiracies that you perhaps didn't believe in before? And then you're kind of like through your work, you're like, wait a minute, this might be real.
I've become more and more open-minded, and the more I was looking into the history and the aftermath of the Vietnam War, of the conspiracy theory that there could have been live POWs left behind, and perhaps the government might have swept it under the rug just for the sake of ending the war quickly. And in the 80s, there's the Rambo conspiracy. And you had a bunch of films where they're going back to rescue the hostages, but I tell them that's plausible, because you have the spectrum of conspiracy theories from the very plausible, like corruption or assassinations, or military cover-ups. And you look at things like Iran Contra or Watergate, the Pentagon Papers scandal. So those are real, actual conspiracies. And then you're looking at the numbers with the people missing in action, and then it gets you thinking that it is plausible that they were not all released, because there's so many of them unaccounted for. I forget off the top of my head how many thousand soldiers were unaccounted for. So we don't know if they're killed in action, they're still in prison someplace, they're just missing. And then how quickly the country wanted to move past the Vietnam experience. That really had me thinking that it is plausible. Probably by now they would be dead, but maybe that you do perhaps have that in the 70s and the 80s.
I mean, I feel like anything is possible, especially when it comes to like military stuff. I mean, I think that there was oh gosh, was it? If I'm forgetting the guy's name, where he had a reality show and he went down to South America to find Nazis, and found these villages in South America where it's basically like being in Nazi Germany, where he's in the person's kitchen and there's swastikas on the wall. They're all speaking German. And I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? But it really happened, and it's really there. And it's like, okay, you hear about like Operation Paperclip, and us
Mm.
taking
Yes.
Nazi scientists in order to help create the atomic bomb, the whole all those shenanigans. Is there like a blueprint to create like the perfect conspiracy? I mean, you connected the dots in your story. I'm the Antichrist, but are there specific psychological elements that make a conspiracy like the perfect conspiracy?
Yeah, usually one of the linchpins is the guilt by association. That if somebody was friends with somebody, or maybe they might have been photographed with someone who's been accused of something, or maybe they went to a certain school and there might have been a scandal there. That's usually where the conspiracy believers will start drawing the line.
The
And
Epstein files, yeah.
Mhm, sure, and then usually it's basically how powerful is somebody that you don't trust, because really if you have a lot of people are very wealthy and they're able to lock themselves away behind closed doors, and like you said, they have a lot of connections to other organizations of power, and they have billions at their disposal to spend on political campaigns, but they go into a room and they lock the door. And what are they talking about? So automatically those who are more powerful and wealthier than we are, we just naturally start looking at them suspiciously. And then we start to look at, where's that guilt by association? Whose club were they a member of?
Mm,
And how can those two points be connected?
that's fascinating. I find it interesting because Ghislaine Maxwell, who's you know Epstein's partner, I met her years ago, and I met her at a networking event at, I think it was the Yale Club or the Harvard Club in Midtown, And then I asked her to speak at my event.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
then she asked me to her home. And my business partner and I have been in the Epstein Ghislaine Maxwell townhome. And while we were having tea that her maid brought us, uh, Epstein walked by. It was going up the steps and poked his head in, didn't say hi, and then kept going. And I have a photograph of myself and Ghislaine Maxwell in the foyer of that building. And at my event, I have photographs of step and repeat with her. And, my joke is I send it to my friends via text and I'll say, I may or may not have been invited to the island,
Careful, that can come boomerang back at you. That's absolutely what the conspiracy theorists love to do. They'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh, look, there's pictures of him. Well, he was at the function. Of course, he knows the secrets. So who knows
Yeah.
what he's up to? Maybe he was behind Epstein's murder. So
Ooh,
that's when the the imagination starts
nice to
to.
know that I have that kind of power. Yeah. I'm like, ooh, wow. Maybe I should circulate the photograph. I'll do like get it out there a little bit more. So as we're wrapping up here, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Is what are you working on now? Like what's the next step for you? I think your work is so fascinating and the class is so fascinating. Like, what do you brag a little bit? How can we learn more about you? How can people buy your books and are there more books on the horizon for you?
Yes, there are several projects that I'm working on right now. I'm working on finishing editing together a book about the end of the world on film and on television. And I'm almost finished with a sequel to a murder mystery that I wrote back in 2021. It's called Fatal. The original is called Fatal Pose. It was a murder mystery set in the world of professional bodybuilding, and now a sequel is almost out. And
Well,
then
that's an interesting, very specific scenario. Why professional bodybuilding?
I always liked working out and, lifting weights. Remember watching the old Arnold Schwarzenegger
Yeah, yeah,
movies,
pumping iron.
Sylvester
Yeah,
Stallone, and it's a fascinating world.
yeah.
And then I've started working on a novel that's dealing with these ideas that we were discussing about how you can have the creation of fake and debunkable conspiracy theories to go and wreck all forms of skepticism.
Yeah.
So it's going to be called Neon Forge. And it's this top secret name of the evil plan to create debunkable conspiracy theories.
Very cool work. Very cool work. It's just also fascinating what you do. Is there a main website that you can give now that everybody that wants to buy
Mhm.
your books and learn about you can go to?
Oh, sure. So my website is barnadonovan.com. And then if you go to Amazon or any of the booksellers, they should have copies of it, both electronic, both with hard copy.
Well, doctor, I greatly appreciate your being on the podcast. I think it's so much fun to talk about this stuff. I have to have you back on. When is the next book coming out?
Well, hopefully at some point near the end of next year, the both the murder mystery sequel and the new fake conspiracy film, and then probably the fake conspiracy book, and then the end of the world, hopefully around that time as well.
So
So I absolutely love to chat about all of these things. Really, we can just go on down all kinds of rabbit
down the
holes.
rabbit hole, baby. Thanks so much for watching the Quantum Shift podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, comment, and share.